for attending this event. I'd like to take this opportunity to thank everyone, especially those who is troubled by changing the schedule. We were supposed to have this event at the Ontario Parliament tomorrow morning, but because they're not rising until February, there was an emergency motion, so we have to change the event and the program and the content. But we are honored to have a special guest today, the Honorable Senator Leinda. Thank you for joining us. We are here to stand with the Iranian political prisoners and human rights in Iran, support human rights in Iran and in the Middle East. And we asked Senator to come and say a few words about human rights, the work about human rights in Iran and Middle East, and about the motion she's going to introduce in the Senate about Iran, which is very important. And it was supposed to be tomorrow, I guess, but she just said it's Tuesday, but it doesn't matter. Tomorrow is Universal Human Rights Day, so we take it as a wonderful, important cause that she's doing in the Senate, and we really appreciate that. Well, we are human rights activists. We are not here to thank politicians, senators, and parliament members, but sometimes, it can't go unnoticed. There are certain politicians that they are not just politicians. They are really human rights champions, like Senator Leinda, and I want to thank her from the bottom of my heart and on behalf of everyone, all Iranian Canadians, for what she's doing. And I want to invite her to say a few words about the work she does and the motion she's going to introduce.
Thank you so much, and I must say, I really do feel that I am among friends. I have old friends in this room, and I have new friends, and it feels very much, I feel very much at home with you, and I'm so happy to be with you wherever it is, whether it's the Parliament or in this office. I'm so happy to join you. As Erica says, human rights, but especially human rights for the people in Iran, has been a cause very close to my heart since I joined the Senate, and it's been a focus of my work for almost 10 years now. Every day, the Iranian regime targets and punishes innocent civilians, and every day, brave resistors, like everyone in this room, does everything they can to diligently and persistently fight back to restore freedom and dignity for the people of Iran. And freedom is something that we here in Canada, as a Canadian-born person, we sometimes take it for granted, but we must never forget how blessed we are to have freedom. And the people of Iran deserve nothing less. As Arsha mentioned, last week in the Senate, I tabled a motion. It is calling, among other things, for the Canadian government to place the toughest possible sanctions on Iranian regime entities and individuals who have violated human rights in Iran. And I'm very moved and touched to be surrounded by the faces of the people meant to be helped by this. And the motion also specifically mentions Saeed Malipour, who, as we know, has been suffering for far too long. And but the idea is that the motion stands in solidarity with all of the people of Iran, and the motion declares that, like all people in the world, people of Iran have the right to freedom of association, freedom of religion, freedom of belief, freedom of thought, and freedom of expression. In terms of what's going to happen with this motion, I will be speaking to it on Tuesday. I have asked the members in the other caucuses that if they wish to speak to it, that they also speak to it on Tuesday, and then we try and pass it on Tuesday night, because the Senate is expected to rise on Wednesday, and then we won't be back until February. And this is something that we must never lose a sense of urgency about fighting for these things. And I've said to my colleagues that if they choose to defer it or delay it or adjourn it so that we don't deal with it on Tuesday before Christmas, and then we're going to wait 8 weeks, I will consider that to be them rejecting the motion. And I really don't know how any parliamentarian of good conscience can reject such a motion. I want to add that it is an enormous honor for me to be here with a true and genuine heroine of the Iranian people. And Jabrak, I just want to say to you that you are just so brave.
I know her about
I'm wearing white for you. This is in your honor. Well, it's an honor of White Wednesdays and all the women in Iran. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And I want you to know that your courage and your dignity is an inspiration not only to women in Iran, but to women all over the world, including for me. And I also want you to know, and I want everybody here to know, because I know you're all part of this, that your struggle for the liberty and the dignity of the Iranian people, I have faith that we will see, and I hope it's not too soon. The freedom and liberty for women and for men and for children in Iran. You are, the people in this room, you are fearless. You have all suffered. I know you have suffered terribly. I think everybody here, I know everybody here has a story of suffering. And for that you have my deepest respect. I'm really honored to be among you. You are true warriors for liberty and for justice. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Senator. You attended ICHR's 2013's annual award presentation. 2013 or 15? 2013, my apology. And I'm just going to quote part of your speech. Quote, "Your work with the International Center for Human Rights on behalf of those victims brings their plight into the light of day for all to see. Your work fighting for the liberty of those unjustly incarcerated and often cruelly tortured makes it harder for brutal oppressors to continue their dirty work in the dark. Your activism helps focus the attention of the world's democracies on the ugly realities that exist elsewhere. All that you do gives us hope that one day the people of Iran and all those living under the thumb of other despotic regimes will one day enjoy the same freedom, safety, and human dignity that we enjoy here in Canada." Linda From's speech on the 3rd ICHR Gala, December 2013. And we listen to your advice. Thank you very much. Before I continue, I want to take this opportunity to thank my colleagues and friends, especially Mr. Tahimani Hamid. Salman, Sherry, Ashkan, Ali, and everyone who helped us make this event possible. ICHR is proud to be working on human rights issues, not only for Iran, and the neighboring countries as well, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, and other countries in the area, even in Canada, in the state, in Europe, everywhere we have immigrants, refugees from that particular area. One example is helping refugees to resettle in Canada. We traveled to Iraq, to Kurdistan, to Turkey. We met hundreds of refugees in camps, internally displaced persons in Kurdistan, thousands of them, and we are pushing our government, Canadian government, to reopen the door. Unfortunately, since Liberal government came to power, they closed the door to refugees, just took a certain number of Syrian refugees. They pushed the government so hard that we were able to bring hundreds of refugees who were already accepted in the previous government, had the status, and they were waiting in Turkey for years. We helped them to come to Canada. We continue to push the government to bring more real refugees. We welcome all those refugees. Justin Trudeau always says, we welcome refugees, but unfortunately, he already closed the doors to refugees. Anyway, I was just going to give you an example that we do our fight even in Canada, and we are thankful to all those are in the Parliament, in the Senate, like Mr. Wiesen, Senator Fromm, who are helping us to continue our work in Canada. I'm just going to invite our next guest. It was a surprise, but already introduced by Senator Fromm, so I'm not going to say any more word. I'm going to invite the Shafak Shajari-Zadeh, who is a real human rights, women rights champion in Iran. Just fled the country a couple of months ago, went to Turkey, and then came to Canada, and we are happy that she's safe here with us.
It's my pleasure to be here to share my experience and raise awareness about the situation in Iran. Most of people in this room know about it. I'm going to share my story as a woman who opposed compulsory hijab. Thank you so much, and I have to say, excuse my English. I lost my fluency. Listen to me. There are lots of mistakes. There are gonna be lots of mistakes. I started opposing compulsory hijab since May 2017. When I heard about White Wednesday campaign. For me, it was very great. This campaign invite all the people in Iran, all the women, to be involved. For years, I envy influential women, lawyers, journalists, women activists, human rights activists, but somehow I felt the lack of our support before them. They were doing everything for bringing back our rights, for bringing back women's dignity, but somehow, in some point, the government could stop them because they were a few activists, and the government could easily oppress them. And I knew a little bit about suffragette, the women's movement in Europe, and I always thought we don't have the element of having normal women, people in these movements. So when I heard about White Wednesday, in that day, I went to Tajrish, a famous square, and I bought myself a white scarf. I didn't have that. I was very enthusiastic. For months, I encouraged my friends, my family to join me. Among my friends, I wasn't successful. I sent lots of white scarves to Toronto. Asked my friends, "You're living out, support us." Because in that time, at first they were a few women. Then little by little, the movement got bigger. I remember the time that I was sad because any newspaper or any TV channels wouldn't talk about our campaign. Out of Iran, inside Iran. Inside Iran, the government was pushing hard to humiliate women. But out, there was nothing. Little by little, our cause got bigger. Compulsory hijab, as you know, stopped lots of talented and well-educated women from the roles they deserve in society. Because if you want to get promoted, to have a high position in government, you have to wear proper hijab, the chador. And you know, lots of women from the beginning, they know they can't lose their dignity and wear that big piece of cloth. So for lots of us, it was like, we're not going to think about those careers or professions. The other thing is, for 40 years, not only they have morality police officers to arrest us, to humiliate us, to insult us, they encourage their followers to have the right and insult any woman in the streets if they don't like the woman's appearance. It's not just covering your hair, you know. It's the color of your dress. The only dress, the only color our government has been chosen for women is dark. So wearing other colors can be insulted easily. Or for example, having high heel shoes. Or I don't know if you remember, for years we were banned from having long boots. They call it seductive. Our choice of dress called seductive, and the rapist, the sick people in the streets, they can insult you and do whatever they want and easily walk away. I had those expressions. White Wednesday campaign came along with Me Too. I was one of the women who got involved in Me Too. I revealed lots of things happened when I was a teenager. During my time in Garchak, one night, and I don't know, investigator came to the prison. It was around midnight, and it was the night I met Maryam Shariat Madari. And I told that inspector, I told him, I'm so sorry, I don't know if I have to tell you this, but I'm part of Me Too women. I told him about a story of my, I don't know if I was in university. A man revealed himself in the street. It wasn't the first time. It wasn't my first experience. Before that, usually I would run away. But that day, with the help of another guy, I could take him to the police station. What was the chief of police answer? Shh, you're a woman. Don't even talk about it. I was shouting. And the answer was, shh. And the other thing was, cover your hair properly and go. It means, and I was going to the university with a black scarf, with a black long uniform, and for example, my scarf was like this instead of here. And it was the answer. A man could easily invade my privacy, rape my mental health, and he could walk away because of compulsory hijab. for years I was angry. Iranian government make people live a double life. You know, there is a saying, we lie, Iranian people lie. Iranian people don't lie, they live a lie for 40 years. Those were my motivations to oppose compulsory hijab. What I got arrested. I was beaten up. They sent me to solitary confinement. I was lucky there were other women because in that prison it was just 3 rooms. I don't know if I call it lucky or fortunate or unfortunate for the others because they are still in jail. I was with Daravish. If it's long, please let me know. Daravish. No, if my speech is long, please let me know.
You have 2 more minutes.
Okay. And I could see women bleeding for a week because they got beaten up badly. 9 of 10 women was bleeding. Their skin were black, their legs were black. I could see those. They need medical help. There is no medical care in Qarchak. I was arrested 3 times, sent to jail twice. The 3rd time, I got arrested with my 9-year-old son. He was with me in interrogation room for 6 hours. And I got handcuffed in front of my kid. He was screaming, shouting, please let us go home because we were in a city in the middle of desert. I don't know, 4 or 5 hours drive to our city. I had to be in a jail with real criminals. And both times in jail, I was banned from calling my family, calling my son, or contacting my lawyer. My lawyer, Nasrin, did everything for me, but the only thing he could do was brought the attention of media. Inside court, she couldn't do anything because they didn't even I had 2 hearings, 2 first court trials. They didn't let us even say hello to each other. In those sessions, she contacted me with, she was talking to me like with eye contact. And the judge told him, don't do that. So there is no help from anyone when you are inside prison. When you are behind those doors, you realize there is no love. There is no justice. And you see, it's like movies, and you're shocked. It's like you see they can do anything with you, and nobody's there to help you. That's why I left the country. There are lots of human activists right now inside prison. There are lots of lawyers, human rights lawyers, that their only crime is defending their clients, just that. And they cannot even have a lawyer. There's a list of 20 lawyers that the Justice Department has provided. Just those people that they approve of. This is not justice. So, as a woman who suffered a lot, I want the world to support justice and target injustice. woman, I want the women politicians who go to Iran. The day I got arrested, there were 3 women politicians from Netherlands, what we call Holland? Sweden, yeah. Yeah. They were wearing compulsory hijab. And I was arrested for opposing that law, that inhuman law. We want the women politicians to support us, stand beside us. And right now, Nasrin Sotoudeh is on hunger strike to support Farhad Maysami. We're gonna lose him soon because it's more than 130 days he's been on hunger strike just for demanding equality for women and men. He didn't do anything against national security. When you are inside prison, they're gonna charge you with lots of false, trumped-up accusations to keep you there, to keep you silent. Arash Sadeghi, as you know, his life is on jeopardy, and the judges don't let him have medical care. We're gonna lose lots of our human rights activists. As you know, there's just 1 or 2 human rights lawyers out of prison right now. Please do something. Thank you.
Everyone in this room were in jail in Iran or somewhere else, or at least one of their family members were in jail, or maybe somehow everyone related, and we all already told our stories. And it's,
so I talked a lot.
No, you have all the time. It's your turn now to speak, and every time you want to come and speak, you are more than welcome. And you have to tell your story to the world. We want to listen, and we want to make everyone to listen and act. We need actions, and thank you so much for doing that. I want to, if Senator has some time, I want to ask if anyone has any questions about the motion. We can take a couple of questions, like 2 or 3, and Senator will be very good.
Senator, if you are, if you all understand, you can sit.
Okay.
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 Yes.
Okay.
If you're comfortable, you can take it.
Okay. So I received some question about the motion, and it's the second part that we are again. First of all, is this motion bring any obligation for the government, or just it is something that it's a symbolic motion?
I'm sorry to have to say that it's largely symbolic. As you all know, there was a motion that was passed in the House of Commons in June that was similar. We added the Magnitsky sanctions in the Senate motion. But, I was actually in the gallery in June watching the House of Commons vote on that motion, which I really did not expect to pass, but it did. And I watched the Prime Minister and the Foreign Minister and the Public Security Minister vote in favor of listing the IRGC immediately as a terrorist entity and to stop all negotiations with the regime for diplomatic relations. So when the it's symbolic when the Senate does it. To me, it should not be symbolic when the Prime Minister himself votes for the motion, which has happened, and that happened already 6 months ago. Now we are hearing that Global Affairs is still setting conditions for reestablishing relations, which is in violation of the motion that they voted upon. And of course, as we all know, there's been no effort or any movement towards listing the IRGC, even, in part, as a terrorist entity. So one of the reasons I wanted to have this motion in the Senate was to remind the House of Commons that they agreed to do these things. I hope that if the Senate also urges the government to do these things, it's a reinforcement that this is what the people of Canada, through their representatives, want to see happen, and it's what should happen.
Is there any possibility that independent or liberal senator oppose this motion? And if yes, we know that all the people in this room just get 24 hours, maybe less than 24 hours. How can we affect on independent senators who oppose this kind of motion? And let's remember S2 190.
Right. So yes, I think your reservations about the likelihood of them supporting it are well-founded. I have the same fears, but I also have been trying to lobby some of the people that I know have expressed hesitation. Some of their excuses are that they feel that it is not the role of the Senate to direct the government on matters of foreign affairs, but that's ridiculous. I mean, we do it all the time, and we have a foreign affairs committee, and we make motions and recommendations. That's what we do. So I've heard this used as an excuse, but I don't find it very reasonable. And then again, I've said to some people, the fact that the Liberal House of Commons caucus supported a similar motion, that there actually will be out of step with the Liberal caucus if they decide that this is somehow inappropriate for the Senate to make such recommendations. So I feel like there's some people who initially said they wouldn't support it, who are now telling me they will. To be honest, I think that if they don't support it, what they're going to do is they're going to adjourn the motion, because we are on the eve of this big long break. So if somebody stands up and says, I'd like to adjourn it, like I say, that's like killing it. It means when we come back in February, we can still debate it, but it's not appropriate, I think. When you describe the suffering that's going on right now at this moment in prisons across Iran, and the idea that, we can wait till February to make a statement about it is insulting to the people who are suffering. This is urgent, and to sort of say, we'll put it away for another day, does not give it the importance it deserves. So I have told people, if you do that, then those of us who care about these things will perceive it that you don't care, and that you wanted to kill this motion and you don't believe in it. And you can't use the excuse, I didn't vote against it. Well, you did. If you put it aside or to another day, you have voted against it. So I honestly don't know how it's going to go, because I've told them that adjourning it is like killing it, so be clear, and no one's going to be fooled. And yet there's some people who told me initially they weren't going to support it, who are saying, maybe I will, so we'll see.
Okay.
I honestly don't know.
Anyone, I can guess so is there anyone who want to ask a question? Dr. Daylan?
Hi, Senator, thank you so much first. I have a question regarding that motion during the summer. Why is it still a motion and not an order? What happened?
Why is a motion and not?
Not an order. Why is not an order? What is a still motion?
Yes, okay, so a motion, unlike a law, is really, it is often a very symbolic gesture where, the power in the country is with the Prime Minister and the Prime Minister's office. So as parliamentarians, when we want the Prime Minister to do something that he's not doing, and particularly when you're in the opposition, as I am, a motion is one of the only ways that you have to say, on behalf of the people that I represent, this is what we want you to do. So that's the value of having them. And when they are unanimously, the motion in June was not unanimously adopted, but when they are adopted because a majority supported it, it's supposed to say to the government, we expect you to take action. I think it is a contempt of Parliament for the public safety minister to stand up and vote for a motion saying he will list the IRGC as a terrorist entity, and then when he walks out of the chamber and the media say, are you actually going to do this, his answer is, I'll look into it. Well, you just voted that you were going to do something, and then if you walk out and say, I'll think about it, then that is a dishonest thing to do. You should have then voted against it, because that would be more transparent. So, but in terms of passing a law to list the IRGC, I mean, that has to come from the Prime Minister's office. If they either want to do that or they don't, and if they don't want to do it, it won't happen. And the only thing we can do then is vote for a different Prime Minister.
Hopefully.
Just one quickly, Senator, so this is not very unusual for Prime Minister to stand and vote for something and then they say that, I think about it?
It's very unusual. You're right. It is very unusual. And it is very disappointing to me because it is so dishonest. And in fact, I didn't post it on my, but I might for you, just for your interest. I did ask the leader of the government in the Senate this very question last week. And I said, the Prime Minister stood and voted for this, and he hasn't done it. And isn't that contempt of Parliament? And then the leader said, no, it's not. It's just only, and he gave this answer, only the Prime Minister has, his prerogative to do what he wants. He can take the advice of Parliament, but it's only advice, and then it's up to him to do what he wants. But I said, no, I don't think so. If he wasn't going to do it, and he knew he wasn't going to do it, he never should have stood there and received the praise and appreciation of the community, because he was willing to do that. He was willing to take the thank you, like, oh, okay, you recognize, what a venal organization this is. And so he wants to get the credit for recognizing it, but he's not prepared to do anything about it. And that's classic political hypocrisy.
Anyone else wants to ask questions or want to make comment, even comments? The officer.
Thank you for coming. Have you looked into the Prime Minister's brother's affairs and his connections with the Press TV and Islamic Republic? Because things are getting a little weird and awkward, especially in Britain and Canada. The head of the opposition in Britain used to work for Press TV, and here Prime Minister's brother used to work for Press TV. Is the Islamic Republic actually that close to the levers of power in these countries? Is anybody following this, and is there anything going to happen?
Well, I expect you know much more about it than I do, although what you describe is not unknown to me. I know the general story, but I also, I think it's very interesting also the Chinese-Iranian dynamic, and that the Chinese lobby in Canada is very strong. And I can't pretend to say I understand how these things intersect exactly, but I have this feeling like they do, and that there's unfortunately other pressures that are being brought to bear that are below the surface that we don't really understand and know about. And that's why, again, I feel like motions like this, in terms of their value, is to help shine a light on who's on whose side. Like who's prepared to stand up and be counted on behalf of human rights, and who is maybe having other allegiances and alliances that they're being more loyal to. And so that's one of the things we might find out on Tuesday night. I would like to know that. I would like to know who I'm dealing with, among my colleagues. Like where are you prepared to at least take a stand for doing the right thing on something? Even though we can all recognize that, no concrete action may follow, but stand up at least. Show your cards. Tell us whose side you're on.
Hello, this is Leinda from. First of all, Chag Sameach and Mazel Tov. Happy Hanukkah to everyone. As a Persian Jew, I have a question about some act of liberal government. I want to know your personal vision about it. How long are we gonna see this kind of behavior from our politicians here in Canada? For example, Shakarek is one of the feminist activist in Iran, and like when she was in the prison, Justin didn't say anything about it. And then another like a Saudi feminist like were in trouble. They like just announced it like very exaggerating, and like they cut the relation with Saudi's government, and like Saudis like reacted as well. So it's gonna make like most of the people here I know, as far as I know, like they supporting conservative politicians in Canada. So like how long we gonna see this kind of behavior? How, like why they're not gonna make it clear like their behavior with Iranian government? Because like when we support our politicians, we wanna see it, at least they say one sentence on the like for supporting Shaparak. We don't want them to go to Turkey or like to go to Iran and bring Shaparak out from the prison. At least we can see like one sentence like, okay, we have a sympathy with Shaparak, or we had a sympathy with Nasrin.
I just want to tell you that if you see the majority here conservative, doesn't change the fact that ICHR and this organization is just for human rights. It's non-partisan, non-government organization. We have members and volunteers from different backgrounds. Maybe, it's a beauty of Conservative Party that most of the former political prisoners are now members of the Conservative Party. But this organization is obviously non-partisan. Maybe our members, some of them are conservative. So
thanks for that. And then the second thing is. We hear that like state government they prepare their list, because we know Islamic government in Iran, they are experiencing the last days or months of their government in Iran, so they're gonna go for sure 100% very soon. So and they do like many things to keep themselves in the government in the top. So state government they're preparing a list of the relatives of the governments in the state that they are holding the American passport. Are we gonna have such a things in Canada as well? Because like we see those people, they are related to the government, and they just like living like a king here. They have no daytime job, and they have to work like hard and like dollar by dollar. It's very hard to get to earn it here. So. Is it like government does government have any plan to like make it at least like a list for that? For sure, you guys knows like better than us.
Well, I mean, I'm not a member of the government. I'm a member of
No, just like for your personal view,
yeah. But I mean, yes. I mean, I think that in terms of applying sanctions to people who have committed crimes in Iran or are here, with ill-gotten gains that they've stolen from the country, of course, I think we should be sanctioning those people. We should be looking for them and sanctioning them. Do I think that's going to...
15,000 people.
That's the thing that all Iranians inside Iran want from Canada.
Right. And I mean, listen, I think it'd be helpful even to do it for one person, to find somebody and send a message also that this won't be tolerated. Do I think that's going to happen? I mean, there's not been any signs that we have. That with the Magnitsky legislation in place, we have the means to do it, the vehicle to do it. There also has to be the political will to do it. So I don't know about that. In terms of the silence of this government for support of you or the White Wednesday movement in general, I think the reason why we see that silence is because it puts them into a bit of a bind on the question of hijab. The notion of compulsory hijab is something that this government has difficulty with because, they have a message that, the diversity is our strength message, and so they don't want to offend people. And I don't want to offend anybody who chooses to wear hijab. I mean, when it's a genuine choice, that's fine. And we tolerate everybody's religious choices and cultural choices. that's an important Canadian value. But I don't find it difficult to make the difference between understanding that the hijab in Iran is a weapon of oppression. But for the liberals to start talking about that and making those distinctions between sometimes the hijab is oppressive and sometimes it isn't, is something they just don't want to talk about at all, and so they don't.
Thank you.
Too complicated for their brains. The idea of, well, feminists right now are pushing the idea that hijab is actually empowerment. So there has tolerance. It's not tolerance. It's empowerment now.
Right.
It's not like we're tolerating something very primitive. It's great. Let's do it more.
Exactly. And so that's why it becomes really difficult to acknowledge that there are millions of women who are being oppressed and imprisoned and tortured because they don't go along with that wonderful symbol of empowerment. I mean, it's, yeah.
Okay, everyone, thank you so much for attending this event. I really appreciate your support. Please continue supporting our causes, not only ICHR, we have causes with working with other organizations, mutual programs. So anything you want, you're interested in supporting, please let us know. As Shafar had mentioned, Arish Sabri in jail, he is really suffering, he is very ill, and the prison authorities not covering his medication and treatment. We are trying to collect some money, raise some fund, and send to his family. So if you want to help, please let us know, or we can give you account number in Iran on behalf of the family, so you can directly send the funds to Iran to the family. It's up to you, your choice. We don't want to financially directly involve, but we are helping to collect money and send to Iran for Arish Sabri. And this event is all about political prisoners, raising awareness, and I'm sure that you are doing something somewhere, and I would appreciate your support by ICHR too. Well, if Senator had any final comments and Shafat, I would be happy to hear. If not, we will conclude this program.
I just want to say that I want to repeat just the respect I had and just the reminder that the idea that everybody in this room has either has a prison experience of their own or family members. It is devastating to hear that. And I just really salute you all for having the courage to fight back, dedicating yourselves to making Iran a free country. I'm in awe of all of you. I thank all of you, and I respect all of you. So thank you so much for having me here to share this with you.
Thank you so much.
Could you explain to us what is your recent motion that you're introducing?
I introduced a motion in the Senate of Canada that, if passed, would condemn the Iranian regime for egregious human rights abuses, would ask that those responsible be listed under the Magnitsky sanctions, calls for the immediate release of Saeed Malikpour, a Canadian resident who's been held, detained unlawfully for 10 years, and expresses solidarity with the people of Iran and their aspirations to live in freedom.
Is there any mandate, or it would be mostly a symbolic gesture?
It's a symbolic gesture, but it does call on the government to list the IRGC as a terrorist entity immediately. It asks the government to use sanctions to condemn human rights abusers. So it's symbolic, but it is a motion of the Parliament of Canada to take action against some of the worst malign actors in the world.
Thank you so much.